Agencies Drinking Beer is brought to you by Proposify, software that helps agencies streamline their proposals in the cloud and get faster sign-off.
Welcome to the 15th episode of Agencies Drinking Beer. Today we're going to be talking with Alan and Eva from 1400. They're a full-service agency based in LA, and they focus mostly on the legal industry, so they're going to be teaching us how to service legal tech startups and law firms to help them get more customers. So last week we went to Startup Fest in Montreal. Kevin, you and I went there last year when we kind of were just really getting going with Proposify. And thankfully to some of our listeners who are customers as well, we're able to afford taking more team members this year. So that was a nice experience. It's a beautiful city and a really good event. I like it. I like it's laid back. A lot of cool names there. Actually, I wanted to tell some of the listeners about, my favorite talks there. Actually, Sean Ellis was there. I'm not sure if the listeners have heard of them. I'm sure if you have heard of the term growth hacking, you've heard of Sean Ellis. He was the guy who coined that term. So he gave a talk on growth hacking. And I know, depending on who you talk to, some people are very, some people kind of like poo-poo the term growth hacking. I said poo-poo. I don't know why. What's a better way to say that?
Well, it's very Montreal. Le poupou.
Le poupou. Le gros poupon. I don't know what accent that was.
Yeah, anyways.
So, some people think growth hacking is this kind of trendy, hipsterish term that doesn't really mean anything. But it was really good. I've thought it was a pretty cool concept for a long time, and I don't think it's just a trendy thing. I think it is a real thing. But getting to hear it right from the horse's mouth, so to speak, was really cool. So, if you don't know what growth hacking is, it can probably be defined, if you ask somebody else, they'll probably define it differently. But at least to me, what it means is just constantly refining and testing your growth and being very growth-minded. Sounds very simple, and that's what you'd think, okay, if you run a startup, who isn't growth-minded? But it's more of like applying a process to that. Because a lot of times, we look at some sites and it seems like they never change. Mm-hmm. A lot of people do that. They kind of get their lead gen, their conversion to a certain point they're happy with, and they just kind of give up and they just let it go from there. And I think growth hacking is kind of more obsessively always testing different levels of your funnel to make sure that you can achieve the highest growth possible. And then sometimes you hit a big home run where your growth explodes. So two of the best examples of it were when, and I think Sean Ellis was behind maybe one or both of these, but he was for sure behind the Dropbox example. So the Dropbox one was when they applied this hack, if you will, where if you give, as soon as you sign up for a Dropbox account, they'll say you get 5 gigs or whatever or 10 megs of more space by just emailing it to somebody. For every person you email a link to Dropbox, you get more space. So people were just like spamming this like crazy to all their friends because they wanted more space. And Dropbox, for them, space is cheap. And, when you get it at a volume, it doesn't cost them anything, but was really valuable for them is, of course, you promoting it. And it's really hard to make SaaS products that viral, and they're inherently not as viral, but this worked. Their growth exploded exponentially after this. And it was only coming about through a process of coming up with ideas, testing them out, and then moving on to the next test and seeing what worked.
Nice thing about Dropbox, too, it's a lot of B2C. Because I had a lot of friends even just sending me personal invites. I remember when they were doing that to Dropbox for some free
That's
space.
True. That's a good point, because I think that's why it worked maybe well was Dropbox at first was very B2C.
Yeah.
And so people are happy to email it to all their friends.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then I think they maybe went after the enterprise later.
Absolutely.
But that was cool. The other really popular example is Airbnb. And what they did was they hacked Craigslist at the early days so that, anytime somebody was posting about renting out their space, their condo or whatever, there'd be a link to the Craigslist ad. And then Craigslist realized there was this hole in their API and plugged it up so they couldn't do it, but by then they had grown so quickly. So that was kind of cool. So Sean Ellis was there talking about how to actually apply this, and so anyway, he talked about this ICE score. So kind of their process at the company he's with now, Growth Hackers, is everybody who's involved in the growth team comes up with a whole slew of ideas for things to test to kind of get more growth. And then they apply this, what they call the ICE score to it. So the ICE stands for impact, confidence, and ease. So impact, if it works, what's the potential impact? Is that a 0 or a 10? If this thing works out, what can it do for the business? Confidence is evidence that it will work, so 1 out of 10. How confident are you that this is going to work? And then ease, how easy is it to implement? So basically they've got this scoring system to decide what idea you work on first. So everybody comes up with a hypothesis. If we do this, we expect, we'll improve growth by this much. And then they kind of score it to say which test should we actually run. So every week they're running like 3 tests. Not all at the same level of the conversion funnel. One might be like higher up. They're just testing their marketing site. Another one might be trying to improve retention, and somewhere in between. But they're always running these tests, and then they test it for a couple of weeks. They pull the results, and they figure out, they actually have like an analyst who just works on this stuff, who looks at the results and then figures out, is it statistically viable enough that, we've got enough evidence, enough data to make a change and improve growth. So I thought that was kind of cool, because it was one thing to just talk about growth hacking, but then when you apply this very tangible process to it, it makes sense. And what you love, Kevin, is that it doesn't require spending money on advertising.
Oh, I like that.
So the thing I love about it is it's very good for startups, because it's about being scrappy. It's about outsmarting your competition, not outspending them. And I thought that was a cool thing.
That is a cool thing.
And something I want to apply for our business. I think we should start doing that.
Yeah, let's do it.
What you wanted to talk about, one of the talks you saw that you enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, pleasantly surprised. I mean, that this guy Harper Reed actually led the Obama campaign online and raised close to $1 billion. I mean, unbelievable. And his talk was great. He's very dynamic.
Yeah, he's funny as
he is.
hell.
And you look at the guy, he's awesome.
Yeah, he looks like this super, well, I don't want to say hipster twice in the same episode, but he's, got piercings and...
Cross between hipster
tattoos.
and ZZ Top.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. And actually, he was one of the founders of Threadless, this T-shirt company that had, like, custom... So and he loves to, I think, tout this, that, him and his co-founder invented crowdsourcing. Because with Threadless, people would upload their T-shirt designs, and then they would score the best ones, and then they would sell shirts of those, custom artwork online. So their users created their product for them.
Think about this: we get to see people that created crowdsourcing, well, supposedly, and growth hacking. I mean, they have some great speakers at that event. Mm-hmm. Really inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, the other one, just to quickly talk about, I don't want to take up too much time with it, but if you've ever heard the company Intercom.io, I think they just called it Intercom now. So this was one of the founders. His name is Des Traynor. Des Traynor, he's an Irishman.
Des Traynor?
Yes. We're so good at accents. So he talked a lot about product management. And I mean, if you run an agency and you work on digital products and websites and apps, you probably don't have to deal with product management as much as if you work constantly with the same client over the course of years building the same product, then you've got to really think about product management, because it could become so hard when you're working with a client. You basically have to build whatever they say within the budget you have, and you can consult them and you can sort of lead them to it. But when it's your own product and the only people giving feedback are customers and users, it becomes a real challenge to try to figure out what features do you build, what features do you improve upon, and how do you manage all that feedback and decide what to build. So that, in a nutshell, is what product management is all about. So he came up with this grid. Well, actually, I don't think he came up with it, but he used it anyway, this grid for scoring what features you build. So we'll put a screenshot of this, I think, in the post so people can visualize it. But imagine you've got, a simple XY grid. and the vertical, the y-axis, is at the very top all of the time, most of the time, some of the time, and very little. So at the very bottom is people use this very little of the time, and at the very top is people use this all the time. And then across the x-axis, you've got few people, some people, most people, all people. So at the very far side of that x-axis, you've got all people. So the closer you are to the top right part of that grid, the more important that feature is to build. If all people use this all of the time, then you should be really focusing on improving that or building that feature. The closer you get to that sort of that bottom left part of it is very few people are using this very few of the time, it becomes much easier to know not to build that. So I think that's a really helpful framework.
Very much so.
Because other than that, how do we decide on what to build as a team currently? A lot of it's just, looking at kind of using our innate gut feeling of what do customers seem to be talking about, and trying to, some of it's personal opinion. Sometimes we favor a certain feature over somebody else on the team just because that resonates more with us. This makes it a little bit more objective, I think.
Helps prevent feature bloat too.
Yeah, he had a really cool quote that he said in it, and I wrote it down. I think I tweeted it as well, but he said, nobody just decides they want to build a bloated product. They get there one weak decision at a time. I thought that's really cool because you notice over the span of a year, if you just keep throwing features and UI stuff without doing any pruning, and actually it's really helpful every now and then to look at a feature that's never being used and kill it right away. Yep. Usually he mentioned in it, it was so poignant that sometimes you build a feature, you throw it out there, and all the people who said they wanted it don't use it. So then you go, oh, let's kill it now. And then you find everybody complains. They didn't use it, but they're still complaining that you took something away from them. You took their cookie, he put it, right? But if you never build that feature in the first place, you don't have to do that, and you save a lot of time.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I love those talks. As you can tell, I'm pumped. I've had 2 coffees today. I'm excited.
Another great thing about this year was the fact we did have the team there, and the technical team, really. And, I was able to make intros, do my networking thing, which is I do, and make direct intros to, say, our CTO, Jonathan. And I know with QuickBooks, I was able to introduce Alex to those guys, and then Alex had a nice hour-long chat with one of their technical guys about integration, which is one of our future integrations. So having the team there above and beyond just the team-building aspect, which we did a lot of, I think just having them there was great. And then for them to see the talks and meet people firsthand is excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we should mention we left Jennifer and Sandra home, not because we're terrible people or because we're a boys' club. They were our 2 newest employees, and it just worked out that they had to stay home because we didn't buy tickets.
Yeah, we already had it all booked in advance and everything. So, but next time
they'll come. They did a great job holding down the fort.
Oh, they really did.
Yeah, and I think I think at Volta while we were gone, they had a champagne celebration here, so they got to tie one on without.
What do you mean a champagne celebration that we were gone?
No, yeah, they did. Mostly kidding. They were happy we were gone, but also because we're moving to a new space.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great.
So we're excited about that.
Yeah.
So anyway, with no further ado, let's jump into our interview with Alan and Eva from 1-400.
Excellent, in LA.
I'd like to introduce Alan and Eva from 1-400, based out of Los Angeles. And they run a law innovation agency that does legal services, product development, and consulting. So thanks for being on the show, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. So give us a little bit of background around, how you started 1-400, how the idea came about, and how you got here.
Yeah, so I practiced in New York. I'm an attorney, and I then joined a startup in a marketing capacity. I was in New York, moved to LA, and I was looking for people that were also interested in the technology sector and how it influenced legal services. And actually found Alan through LinkedIn because of his background, and I'm sure he'll tell you, at LegalZoom and the LA County Bar. So we got together and, we use our knowledge of the legal industry and the business, of running a law firm to help our clients. So our client base is basically anyone in the legal industry, so legal tech startups and law firms. And we're full service, so we help them with anything from public relations to running AdWords to SEO, basically anything that can help grow their business.
That's great. What I love about that specialty, as you guys know, we always talk on the show around how agencies really need a specialty. And I love that you guys focused on the market you knew. I mean, it just makes sense because you understand your clients' pain points because you've been in it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, in 2006, the economy here in the U.S. in particular took a big hit. I think probably even globally. It started to decline. So one of the biggest industries that had a large impact on was the legal industry. And so you had these kind of firms that had been around for 100 years that were now filing bankruptcy and dissolving. And part of it was driven by austerity. The other part was driven by the rise of non-attorney-owned legal tech startups that were kind of disrupting the industry. As Eva had mentioned, I was part of that experience, being the director of attorney services at LegalZoom.com. And my job there was to create legal services products that could be commoditized and offered to the masses at lower cost than would have been offered traditionally. And so kind of taking that experience and seeing this inevitability of moving the legal industry towards more of a product-oriented type of business, we, founded kind of 1-400 on that premise. So, now, those same kind of disruptive services that legal tech startups are offering, we offer to our clients, which kind of allowed us to really grow quickly because there aren't, at least to my knowledge, any other agency offering that specific type of service.
Could you maybe just clarify for myself and our listeners, because I'm not too familiar with it. When you say like a legal tech startup and they were disrupted by non-legal owners, so kind of talk through that a little bit. What do you mean? So what is a legal startup, and when you say products, what are you referring to?
Sure. So like a legal tech startup would be any kind of non-law firm entity that's providing services within the legal industry, primarily online.
So like would something like Docracy be considered a legal startup?
Exactly.
Okay.
There are several, back in 2012, I want to say, there was probably 90 legal tech startups listed on AngelList.co. And if you go to that same list now, there's probably upwards of 600 to 700. Some of these do have attorney ownership, but they're not law firms, right? They're just attorneys working as business owners, and others have no attorney background. One client, former client of ours, LawDingo.com, he's not an attorney at all, but yet, he's running a legal services marketplace.
So what do you think is behind the rise in these legal tech startups? Is it that just people are looking for cheap? It's, the same thing like our backgrounds in design, running a design business, and, all the Squarespaces of the world and 99 Designs sort of eat into design agencies' lunch because people are trying to find cheaper ways to get quality design. Is that essentially the same problem that law firms are facing?
I think, law firms are stuck in the previous century. Everything they do, up until, recently, they haven't been concerned with productivity and increasing productivity and efficiency, because every cost they have, they pass on to the clients, right? Because they have a billable model, pricing model. So I think recently they've started realizing that they have to start doing social media, having an online presence. They're starting to look into investing into software that is going to decrease their costs, because now clients are starting to say, we want a flat fee or we're going somewhere else.
Right.
And so even Microsoft, a lot of the big firms, Microsoft is a client. I mean, they're now concerned with cutting costs for their legal expenses. So help with that. And so all these legal tech startups are popping up.
Yeah, and I would add that, what the legal tech startups are kind of capitalizing on is the previous pain points, right? So the pain of like finding the right attorney, driving across town, paying for parking, a lack of communication. Like, the average life of a case could be anywhere from, a couple of months up to 4 and even 5 years, right? Depending. And so there's a lot of non-communication throughout the process, right? And so people feel like they're left in the dark. So what you see is a lot of these .coms in particular are kind of trying to address those problems. So transparent pricing, which allows like flat fee pricing. So that allows the business owner to better anticipate their costs as opposed to like, say, traditional hourly billing. The convenience of being able to shop for a professional like online, right? As opposed to kind of searching your referral network and kind of interviewing several, right? You can kind of source the crowd for that information now. Active communication, right? So client portals, logins, where you can see progress being made on your legal work, that sort of thing. So these are sort of the differences that legal tech startups are offering, that firms haven't traditionally, but that, we're trying to, now that law firms have become aware, as Eva indicated, we're assisting them to be able to kind of compete more effectively on these same benefits.
Yeah, because traditionally lawyers don't get the best reputation. Everybody knows they make a lot of money and they cost a lot of money. It's why everybody cheered when the lawyer got eaten in Jurassic Park. So, like when you're representing essentially lawyers and trying to make them look better, what are some of those challenges of how you, I guess, try to make lawyers seem more friendly and approachable and sort of compete with them?
And more human, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Well, so from a design standpoint, like images, right? So people don't necessarily hire an attorney based on law school or years of experience alone, right? Like, so they'll hire an attorney based on how well that attorney conveys to them, that they will passionately advocate on their behalf, right? And this depends on different practice areas, but let's use estate planning, for example. With estate planning, a lot of attorneys historically talk about death and taxes, which is two subjects that clients don't want to talk about, right? Like they don't want to acknowledge either. So the attorney that comes across, with the different conversation that talks about legacy, right? Legacy is different than death and taxes, but it's still kind of the same result. So, using that like in your marketing content, and then maybe like photos of the attorney themselves on their website is one way to start kind of building that trust, with the client. It kind of warms the lead. Of course, ultimately, they still have to have a conversation with the attorney to kind of really feel convinced, right? But that's just kind of one way we can start differentiating or humanizing an attorney,
But just like any other, like all the other agencies out there, it's all about the branding, right? And that's a challenge, for a company like Nike, for example. They invest a lot in branding. They understand it. Lawyers don't necessarily understand the value of branding up front, but that's where we come in and we try and make them understand that, look, they have a nice office, they have a nice suit. They need to also have mimic that online.
Yeah.
And so we talk to them a lot about branding, and I think that's something that's unique to us as well in the legal industry.
It's interesting because it's we actually back maybe a year and a half ago, we had a consultant in Boston, or maybe a year ago, and they got us into some Fortune 500 companies for some presentations, just basically through Skype. And one of them was one of the largest law firms in the world, and they admitted that a major pain point is proposal writing or creating documents. And there was this one company they were still using Word documents and actually emailing them to Malaysia, having someone change it, send it back to New York, then up to, it was unbelievable. And they
realized that this, like for example, our system, Proposify, would be great for them, but they couldn't get the lawyers to change their mentality and even learn something this simple or new. That's why they wouldn't adapt.
Yeah, we don't have export to Word function, and they need that because they need the lawyers to make changes in Word and bring it back in our system. We're like, no, we're never probably going to do that. So it's just It's a challenging client, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's challenging for you because there's still some old school mentality around. We find that even with the local law firm, the largest law firm in the region, same thing here. We're a client of theirs. They love what we're doing. They realize they're having an issue, but they just can't get the internal lawyers to adapt to our system. That must be challenging for you too, often, I would think.
Yeah. So let's say like the top 50 law firms, what they do, they probably still do a similar thing that you described, but they have an in-house marketing team, and so what they do is they have a template for a proposal, and when they get an RFP, they use that template and then maybe include a couple other slides. But the interesting part is that a lot of the proposals focus on like the firm history and the experience of the firm. It's not about the client. Which is interesting because, for our proposals, we try and tailor them to the client. If a client needs a website, we focus on that. And really kind of, we always have a call with the client and see what they want before we even send them a proposal. So I think that definitely is a market that needs to be tapped into by you guys. But yeah, I don't know about like using Word. I don't know if they do that anymore.
But to your point, though, I mean, like the law is practiced today the way Abraham Lincoln did it.
that was my point. Thank you. Exactly.
So, I mean, yes, you're right. And it was kind of a risk for us to kind of bill ourselves as a law innovation agency, but I think the timing's right. I mean, like now there's a lot of chatter about like how Watson is going to be the new lawyer for everybody, or technologies like that, right? So we've chosen this as a point of differentiation for ourselves, and it's worked. And what we're finding is that law firms of all sizes, both big and small, like the solo practitioner around the corner and the big 1,000-member kind of firm is interested in pursuing future technologies because they see the change coming, right? I think the biggest changes will come when the laws change around, things that kind of limit the practice, both advertising, revenue shares, different things along those lines. But yeah, I mean, business has been great for us because our clients want to conduct business differently because they see the demand. It's driven by consumer demand.
I want to find out, so just from you guys on the business side, how did acquiring clients come about for you guys? How did you land that first big client and the revenue that you're doing today? You told us you had hit over and above 100K in monthly sales. I mean, how did you get that from your own sales side?
Yeah, so when we first started, we were fortunate in that we had a network of people that immediately reached out to us, right? So transitioning from our past work into agency life was pretty smooth. I mean, it wasn't completely smooth, but we did have reputations, herself working as a marketing manager at a late stage startup, and then myself working as director of attorney services at LegalZoom. So that kind of made the phone ring fairly immediately. Outside of that, it was, kind of going out and beating the bushes, right? So we've been fortunate enough to kind of speak at various events. We've participated on various legal hackathons where we mentor different teams that are participating. And so, that level of networking allowed us to kind of meet other people, talk about our business and learn more about theirs and close another book of business. At this stage, though, really like we're trying to grow a little bit more aggressively, and just like what we sell to our clients, in terms of like marketing efforts, we do for ourselves. So we do a lot of direct mail, a lot of AdWords, retargeting, a lot of social media type work to generate business and buzz, and it's working very well for us.
I mean, when you're consulting with a client, so let's say there's a law firm that you're trying to help them get sales in the door. I mean, kind of, where do you start with that? Like, so somebody who's looking for a law firm and they don't already, I mean, I would assume it's very similar with agencies where most of the clients come from just word of mouth referrals. How do you switch that and turn that into more of kind of a real marketing and sales system for the law firms that you work with, so that it's more kind of predictable sales leads coming in the door there?
Well, I think right now, even at the top, like the big law firms, they still are feeling the crunch a little bit. Like even, let's say top 5 law firms, I mean, they know that they want to increase market share. And so they'll do whatever it takes to increase market share. They might be getting all their, clients from referrals, but there's always room for improvement, and you always want to be ahead of the game. And so the biggest thing, because there are so many attorneys in the U.S. and, even here in L.A., you might be a bankruptcy attorney and 2 doors down, there's another bankruptcy attorney. So in order to differentiate yourself, they're realizing that using online tactics is key nowadays.
I would assume also SEO is really important for them because, a lot of people who don't already have a referral are Googling, law firm Los Angeles or wherever the law firm happens to be. So how do you guys help them from the SEO side?
Yeah, so on the SEO side, there's tons of I would say poorly qualified SEO agencies out there. So we try not to be part of that noise or discussion. Instead, what we focus on is content marketing, which I think, like, when you look at how people acquire legal services, it typically starts with some amount of research, right? So somebody is kind of made aware that they may have a legal issue, right? So I'll give you an example. So somebody might start searching the internet for what to do if I received an inappropriate email at work or something like that, right? So they start kind of researching their own issue for the most part. And so for us, good SEO is really about conveying good content, right? So we're big on blogging. We recommend it for all of our attorneys. We offer that as a service, in fact, where we'll spend a lot of the time and the content that we generate based on those kind of research type subjects. So eventually somebody, who's continuing on their legal research will start asking more detailed questions, and finally kind of draw the conclusion that, like, hey, I clearly need to speak with an attorney about this. And that's where, a combination of like paid ads or social media ads, or something along those lines, that are really kind of up front and center, right when somebody is ready to find the solution, to end their research and find the solution. So for us, good SEO is really just good content marketing.
And is it difficult to get lawyers on board with it? And I suppose, like you said, they've got a lot of marketing teams already who can kind of do this stuff. But do you find there's a lot of training involved on like how to blog, how frequently, how to generate good headlines, like just all the basic online marketing stuff? Do they need a lot of hand-holding in that way?
Well, in fact, we do primarily with most of our clients, we do that for them. So we generate, an editorial calendar that, and we come up with the topics, the keywords, everything like that. And then we have actually attorney copywriters on staff that will write the blogs. And so that frees up a lot of time for attorneys. Most attorneys do not have the bandwidth to blog once a week. They're focusing on all their clients. And
billables.
Right, exactly. Some attorneys do want to do it themselves, and in that case, we'll provide them with the topics and the keywords. But I think the biggest hurdle is just allaying their fears, because obviously, as you know, the legal industry is a regulated industry. So at the end of the day, they're responsible for any, content that's pushed out. So, obviously I'm an attorney, and we all, Alan as well, the whole team is sort of aware of the ethical considerations when it comes to blogging and the website and social media. So that's another kind of differentiating factor. We really label ourselves as, really understanding the ethical nature of the legal industry.
Yeah, in fact, I don't know if I conveyed this in the email, but our name 1400 is actually inspired by the attorney advertising rule 1-400 in California.
Oh, okay. What does that mean?
So attorneys are regulated in their advertising, and every state bar has a set of rules or guidelines that attorneys must follow. And in California, where we're based, the rule is Rule 1-400. It's the rule that attorneys would look up when they have questions about their own advertising. So, in order to convey our deep experience in the legal field, we drew inspiration on our own business name from that rule in particular.
Oh, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Very well targeted. How do you guys find recruiting your own internal staff members? Are you looking for specific legal expertise from people, and is it challenging to find people who are a good fit for your agency?
So in fact, we're not looking for people that have a legal background, because the whole idea of 1-400 is actually to bring ideas from the startup world, from other industries, and bring them to the legal industry. If we hired all lawyers in here, I mean, we would all have the same ideas, and we, wouldn't have had an experience in another industry. So,
yeah, we'd all come to work in top hats and monitors.
That's the best way to work, actually.
Yes.
We're working on that ourselves. At least white gloves. They always go well.
Yeah.
But I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. I guess to a degree, though, you probably, because you're very specialized in the legal industry, and as you grow and maybe the founders are less involved in each individual project, you must have a case where the person who's representing your agency, you want them to have at least some kind of background or knowledge or expertise in the legal industry, just so that your clients don't have any any doubts, or they don't lose confidence that, like, hey, they're recommending something that's totally not aligned with how lawyers think. Do you know what I mean? Where I'm going with that?
I mean, so right now, Alan and I do the sales, but we're actually hiring for a salesperson, kind of to head sales and see. That's interesting you bring it up, because we're not sure. I mean, on one hand, like, there's two large competitors in this industry, and they have massive sales teams, and none of those people are attorneys. Or like most of them are not attorneys, right? So they just teach them what they need to know, and then they go out, on the field and sell to attorneys. But I can't say, that our backgrounds don't help us. I mean, they obviously do. So, a lawyer would trust me, let's say, because I am a lawyer, and so they relate to me. So, that will be to be determined.
Yeah, and I think I think our backgrounds has allowed us to grow as quickly as we have. But in terms of what you're saying, at some point we need to step away. Yeah, that's true. We still, kind of believe that recruiting from outside the legal industry is best, because we get these ideas, and then the legal stuff they'll learn kind of on the job, right? So, we have kind of an internal, just kind of OJT, so to speak, right, where we explain over time, like, there's certain words that just cannot be used, in marketing copy in the legal industry. And so staff members will learn that. I think, for the foreseeable future, all of our copywriters will continue to be attorneys. And so they are a resource, they're generating the bulk of, of our content, that we use for our content marketing and SEO purposes. So, having them as attorneys is probably just good enough.
Does it ever happen that, because you're working solely with law firms, do you ever find that you've got, say, two clients in the same locale? And of course, like, to a certain degree, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, law firms are a fairly localized business to a certain degree. So people are looking for law firms in their area that they can physically go meet with. So do you ever find that there's any conflict of interest, or any occasion where you've got two competing law firms who are at about the same size, the same city, that you guys kind of go, oh, I can't really take this client on because we're already doing a campaign to try to promote their biggest competitor, that kind of stuff?
We get asked to do exclusivity agreements all the time.
Yeah.
But we say no. What we say is we will be transparent if your big competitor, tries to hire us. But I mean, in the agency world, the reality is that's why people hire you. They hire you because you worked on a campaign with someone that they respect and might be in a similar space as. So, like, even if they're both in bankruptcy law, they still have different angles. One might be younger and more in touch with like technology, more efficient. The other one might be older, so you can play up the like more experienced angle. So, the marketing is going to be different, and the people that are hiring each of them is still going to be different.
Does that often go over well when you explain that to clients who want the exclusivity agreement, and do you find that goes over well and they're like, okay, my fears are sort of you've alleviated them, or do you find they're like, no, absolutely, like some people are just, you're either exclusive or no deal?
Well, we'll quote them on what it would be for an exclusivity agreement.
That usually changes their mind.
Nice.
But even when they've declined the quote, right? Like, we've not lost a prospect because of that. That's never been the reason why somebody doesn't hire us. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it. And again, like Eva was saying, I think these attorneys, like, when we're talking to them, they often think like, well, I'm going to take over the world. It's like, no, you need to kind of focus on your market. So, like she was saying on the bankruptcy side, one could be targeting businesses, the other one could be targeting consumers. They're two completely different audiences, completely different messaging, and that's our job, right? Is to find the right audience for your practice and help you excel in that. And so usually just a little bit more kind of explanation with the prospect about how we customize our solutions for them is enough to allay their concerns.
Cool. This is completely off topic, but have you guys seen Better Call Saul?
So I've only seen it. No, I haven't seen the actual show. Just like his character in Breaking Bad.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have cable TV, so.
Oh yeah, I just get it on the internet the day after it airs, but they did the first season, and I just think like you guys would love that show because it's just all about lawyers.
Yeah. No, some of our staff members are big fans, and they keep on telling us to watch, but it's on the list. I'm still trying to get through like season 2 of Suits.
Get out. So kind of what's on the horizon for 1-400? Kind of what are your big goals for this year, and where do you want to be?
So I think like in terms of where we're at in our stage of business, we want to continue to see the strong growth that we have. So right now it's about like building the team. We've got like a great core team right now who's allowed us, to achieve the amount of success that we have. We'd like to start adding to that team, right? So we can do more and increase our capacity. I think going forward, a lot of what we've done, up until now, a lot of what we've done has really been kind of around manual processes that we've developed internally. So kind of like the Proposify team, really, we'd like to kind of start automating some part of these manual processes with an eye towards maybe turning those into products themselves, right? Definitely to use internally, but possibly to allow other people to use externally.
Oh, cool. So you're kind of building your own internal side projects in a way that you could spin out into their own business.
Yeah, potentially. So I think like going forward this year, again, focused on continued growth, continued building out the team, and then to start experiment with automation and software that we've identified that could not just help ourselves, but other firms out there.
Oh, cool. Well, we could always give you our experience in that world because we ran an agency while we built Proposify, and definitely we're glad we did it, but there was a lot of challenges and hurdles to get through it for sure.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about it sometime.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys for being on the show. Loved hearing about it, and as you know, I'm always love hearing from agency owners who pick a really cool industry to target. So that's awesome. Loved hearing about your experiences.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And quick question: were you guys drinking beer during this podcast?
Absolutely.
What were you drinking?
An IPA.
Nice. Actually, we found out today. We usually just go and buy our own beer, but the office that we're working in, they had a leftover keg upstairs on ice with some honey brown in it.
That's pretty convenient.
That was very convenient.
Yes, it made our Friday much more enjoyable.
You got it, fellas. Hey, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good weekend.
Take care.
All right,
Bye.
you too.
All right.
Bye.
To be perfectly honest, we recorded this interview, I think, like a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
It was a while ago.
And I haven't gone back and listened to it yet, so I've got nothing to pull from that interview, but I remember it was really good and I liked it. What'd you think of those guys?
Awesome.
Good.
Oh, they
Love
were
those
great.
guys.
Yeah.
No, we sincerely like our guests.
Yes, and we always seem to glean something from every one of them. Some new information for us and our listeners. And, again, it's the common thread of specialization. And they found a niche and they're doing a great job at it. They're killing it.
Absolutely. You wanted to say something about a California connection.
Oh, God, not again. You're going to be heading to California soon.
I
in
am.
September. So maybe you
I'm
could...
going to be doing lots of Arnold impressions very soon.
Yep. So
I'm going to be going to San Francisco for a Dreamforce. Salesforce convention. Should be fun.
I was just thinking maybe people like, Alan and Eva and some of our other California users and people from the podcast, maybe you could hook up with them while you're out there.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I would love that. For a beer, of course.
Yeah.
And actually, any listeners as well. If you listen to this podcast and you like it, hit me up, Kyle@proposify.biz. Invite me out, pay for my beer. I will I'll readily accept that.
I wonder, and also, especially if you're going to Dreamfest. Dreamforce.
Startup Force, Dreamforce.
Something like that. All right,
yeah, it'll be fun. All right, we will leave you for now. As always, thank you for listening. Please get involved. Send us your questions and rate and review us on the iTunes store.
Later.
Goodbye.